Hello, hello, and welcome back to Shelf Talks, the podcast where we dive deep into the journeys of amazing female founders who are getting their products onto retail shelves and into the hands of consumers. Today, I am so excited to introduce two incredible entrepreneurs behind a brand that's making snack time more delicious and mindful. Please welcome Nina Lombardo and Anna Kotler, the founders of Oats Cookies. They're here to share their story from the inspiration behind the brand to the strategies that help them grow and get their cookies onto shelves. I'm excited to have both of you join. Welcome.
Hi, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So let's just dive right in. What was life like before launching your brand, Nina, and joining the brand for you, Anna?
Well, I had always been in the creative space. I was a creative director in package design, working for CPGs and retail organizations. So I was there creating packaging with a team for other companies and knowing, what went into it. Well, particularly when I was at CVS, which was one of the organizations I worked with, I had a front seat at the table to see really how a private label, because I oversaw private label branding, package design for CVS. So I had a front seat to see how to get a product on the shelf. I learned about co-manufacturers. I learned the whole process. I knew where we fit in. A tendency for a lot of designers and package designers, like that's the most important thing, and it is very important to convey message on the shelf. But I learned really at a higher level, what it takes to really get a product on the shelf. So that's where I was. I had always had my foot in the kitchen because most creatives always need to have many creative outlets, and that's always been a thing since a young person. So while I was with my teams and creating package design, I was also bringing in treats, for everybody and baking for people because that was just a creative outlet. But basically, that's where I was. I was in the creative space. I was in package design for many years.
That's interesting. So you always had kind of a creative outlet. Did you ever think about that creative side being something that you would have as a business?
Yes, I knew at some point in some time, not exactly sure what the product would be, although I knew it would be a food product because that was really my focus when I was in package design, was multi for grocery, some personal care and pet. But I always knew that I wanted to get something on the shelf. That just seemed really exciting to me. What that was took a while to figure out. And then there was a series of events after figuring that I wanted to get a product on the shelf that led me to where we are today.
Yeah. And Anna, how did you become a part of this?
So I actually have a background in consumer packaged goods and brand management. Having worked as a brand manager at big Fortune 500 food companies. I started at Campbell's Soup. I worked at what used to be called Best Foods on the Entenmann's brand, and then also for ConAgra on the Hebrew National brand. And then after having kids, I started consulting. I consulted first in food, then left food for a while. I was in pharma. I even did a stint in tech. And then wound my way back to food because that was just the thing that always inspired me the most. It was the thing I was the most passionate about. One of the things that, Nina and I really connect on is sort of we love to cook, we love to entertain, we love to travel. And then you see all of that and what we came up with from a concept perspective. So I just felt like I could sort of, intertwine those interests more working in food than in other types of industries. So I started consulting and really, as I took on projects, my hope was really to find someone who I thought had a good idea and had what it took to kind of take a business all the way from start to finish. And it took a while. But when I met Nina, Nina and I met at a food industry networking event. And originally, she hired me to just consult for her to help her sort of get into that next phase with what she already had. And we just hit it off. We worked so well together. I actually had a very large client that I gave up and I said, I want to do this with you full time. And that's what we've been doing ever since.
Well, so you had already a strategy of connecting with somebody that had an item already.
Absolutely. Yes.
And why that versus creating something independently? What was your strategy and thought process around that?
Entrepreneurship is a long and lonely road. And even with the two of us doing it together, sometimes I think, I don't think Nina's going to disagree with me. It still feels that way.
Yeah.
In these early stages when you're just doing everything yourself and wearing so many hats, at least having one other person by your side makes a big difference.
Yeah. No, that's great. So you guys met and just hit it off and said, let's join forces together with both our backgrounds and create something.
Yeah.
And our skill sets complemented each other so perfectly. I mean, that was just such a rare find.
Yeah.
So how do you guys break up in regards to what you lead within the brand?
So Anna takes over the strategy and the marketing side. I'm creative. So all the formulations for the cookies. I created them all 3 weeks at one point in my kitchen without leaving and using a lot of Amazon. We created the cookies that we have today. Thank God for Amazon. And so the creative aspect of it, everything from the visual to the actual product is my purview. And then Anna takes over all the stuff that I don't know. So that's how complementary we really are.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how did that start? So, you're in your kitchen and you're coming up with these flavors and ideas, and a lot of all of your products are globally inspired from a flavor perspective, right? So, how did that even come to be?
Well, so just back up, we could back up just for a little. I think I have a story that is probably pretty commonplace in the food space. Again, I go back to I needed a creative outlet. Food has always been something, as I mentioned before, that really attracted me. For a while, for a short while, I was a pastry chef. I kind of took time off from the creative world and became a pastry chef. I also had a wedding cake design business. But fast forward, I was looking for an outlet and I had worked with a local food co-op that needed local products, particularly granola and cookies. So I was like, I raised my hand and volunteered. That led to a stall at a local farmer's market. Still a hobby. I was still working full time. I'd employed my kids in the summer when it was difficult to find a job. So they were there and at the ready, and I used them. I paid them, but and I used them. And that kind of started the whole process. It was a great opportunity to be really front-facing with customers. You sample at farmers markets, so you're able to get immediate feedback. I had started with granola, then I ended up with cookies, and there was this one cookie that really took off. It was a sweet and salty oatmeal cookie. It was thin. It is thin and crispy and sprinkled with salt. I guess that's really launched the brand. But I used other flavors as well, but it really was not a brand. I knew it wasn't really a brand. It was a hobby and it was a fun thing to do. So that's where it kind of started. Knowing what I knew but didn't know enough of it, that was the really the best part about meeting Anna. Because I knew what I needed, but I didn't know exactly what I needed. So that's where we came together and it really became a brand.
So, initially, your thoughts weren't about actually starting a brand, but then you found this one cookie that people just seem to love and
Right.
be attracted to,
Yeah.
and that got your mind kind of thinking about maybe this is something bigger?
I think so. Yeah, I knew the granola wasn't a place, for me to start off with. I had actually sold. I was, start off with farmers market. You get a lot of connections, and we started off. It was actually under a different brand name as well, Nita's Fresh Batch. But started selling to local cafes and farm stands and so on. But it was still small, and you couldn't even call it a business. It was really a hobby. But I knew that one cookie had such a positive reaction, and I knew that it also had the things that it needed to be stable on the shelf. It was thin and crispy. I knew that if we were going to go and I was going to make this into a business, I would want a cookie that had a long shelf life. I know that sounds very specific, but I knew that I wasn't about to build up at a bakery. I knew that we needed to go find a cone manufacturer at some point. So all of those things kind of led me to oh, this is a cookie, that could really work.
Yeah. How did you initially start getting into the cafes and local places to start selling?
It kind of just happened. At the time that I was doing it, it was sort of new, like this local food thing that people had. They wanted local. I was at the right time to do that. So people actually came to me. Farmers market, again, was a great place to do that. But then I went out into the community and I did do some selling, not a lot. And then some online as well. But it was really still very small.
Yeah. What was kind of initial feedback? What were consumers saying about the product?
This may sound a little bit braggy, but I don't think I've ever had really any person, and this still is to this day.
Continues.
Yeah, it continues to this day. I've always had positive feedback. I always know too that you can make anything you want, but unless you have someone to come back and buy that product over and over again, it has to be an exceptional product.
Yeah.
And so I knew that. I knew I wanted to give great value and a really great product, and that's really key to any product you put on the shelf.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Of course, people will always try, but it's are they going to come back and purchase?
Yes.
Right.
Is the
Yes.
most important piece.
Exactly. Repurchase.
So, as you determined that you wanted to start a brand and you connected with Anna, what were you two's first steps in getting the brand off the ground?
So we just started thinking about Nina had, I think it's a very typical situation. She had products, but not a brand. And so we started thinking about, across what she had, like she really just mentioned, what was the thing that kind of rose to the top? And it was this sweet and salty oatmeal cookie. So then we just started doing a little bit of research, sort of going out there, going to stores, looking online, oatmeal cookies. And it turns out that it's kind of a white space situation, right? There aren't a lot of oatmeal cookies out there one on one. They're very typically just your, staid, oatmeal raisin. That's all anyone ever does with it. No one had a line that was specific to oatmeal, which we really liked because it has this kind of health halo to it. And it also just seemed, and this is a phrase that Nina coined that we use all the time, it seemed like the perfect canvas to introduce people to other flavors.
Mm.
Because it's relatively mild, it's humble, it's something familiar, it's something they know. But yet, again, going back to this love of we both love to entertain, to travel, to, sort of explore different cultures and cuisines. And like when we started talking about those types of interests, it just kind of naturally fell into this concept of, a cookie that takes you on a kind of like an exotic taste adventure, right? So, Nina went to the kitchen, literally, like she said, for weeks and started just coming up with, all kinds of flavors. And we started testing them with people. And we did some real testing in stores and with groups of people. We had actual surveys that we had people fill out. And we did it to determine, sort of what are we going to start with? And we picked 3 flavors to start and then, pretty quickly added a 4th. And it's those 4 that we launched with.
We also surveyed the name as well.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that was really valuable as well. It really is a cookie that speaks about the two of us, the story behind each one, how that cookie was inspired and how we got there. For instance, the Churro cookie, the Churro con chocolate, that's actually our one of our top sellers. That was inspired by a trip to Mexico City. I had never been to Mexico. We decided to take a trip to Mexico City, and churros were everywhere. So I ate my fair share of churros and came back and was inspired, also by looking at what's happening trend-wise, too. I knew that there was a connection. A lot of what we do is before we even started and even as you're producing, you're looking at, your category really closely. And as Anna said, we identified this white space. There's a lot of, I say this all the time, we have great choices and we are very open as a society to food from around the world. I mean, you could just drive a mile away and get Thai food and open up any publication and you're hearing about food from all over the world. But the dessert aisle, the cookie aisle, kind of is like, it's been kind of the same for quite some time. So we saw an opportunity there.
Yeah. I love too how you guys are both using your corporate backgrounds and retail experience to really do the work in order to understand the consumer, the packaging, the name, and even competitive shopping and seeing what's on the shelf and how can you stand out and be a differentiator. So it's cool that, that time that you guys spent through all of the amazing careers that you had prior, you were able to utilize a lot of those to really have a strong footing from a start.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very valuable knowing what we know.
Yeah, you definitely had a leg up from a start.
But there was a lot to learn. We had a lot to
Yes.
learn.
Yeah. So then you have your 4 flavors that you say, okay, we want to launch. How did you launch? Was it initially direct to consumer? Is it already store first? What was your thought process and strategy around that?
I'll let you, Anna, take care of that.
Yeah, so, we are bootstrapped. We don't have investors. So given our limited budget, it was a pick one situation. We knew that we couldn't do both, direct to consumer and retailer to start, obviously. We had to pick one. So we chose the retail route because that's what we're both more familiar with. And we knew that we had the experience to execute on it. So, within grocery, really, in order to become a true business, you need to go to distributors. There's no other way around that. Nobody's going to drive around in their car or rent a van or whatever the case may be, and service stores all day. First of all, you don't have the relationships. You're not a vetted, distributor. I mean, it just doesn't really work that way. You have to go to known distributors. So we're based on Long Island, and there's a pretty well-known local distributor here that we started working with that actually distributes in New York City metro area and then even, in certain other parts of the country. And that's really how we launched. And it's been just over a year. I mean, I think it was essentially June of last year where we started getting on store shelves. So yeah. And our focus really has been on kind of like slow and steady progress, not to get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
We really wanted to spend this year kind of testing the waters, see what works, see what doesn't work. Again, getting on shelf is one thing, then getting people to know about your product and to purchase it is a whole nother thing. And it's not an easy task, especially with limited funds.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So can we go back to the distributor? Number one, was that just the first distributor that you found? Because you already kind of knew that that was one locally, or had you gone through a couple of kind of interviews in order to determine the right one?
So no, that we pretty much went to them deliberately. Yeah, and in fact, we've spoken to other larger distributors and put them on hold.
So what does that look like when you are having a conversation with the distributor? Do they automatically take it even though you're not in retail? What are the kind of the things that you tell them or conversations that's had to get accepted?
In most cases, they want one of their anchor accounts to be interested in your product.
Okay.
So there's sort of like a, two-pronged strategy, or you go down parallel paths. And that's what happened with this distributor. There was an account of theirs, one of their bigger retail accounts, that wanted the product.
Got it. Okay. So they kind of have to have somebody that wants it and then they say, "Okay, we'll bring you one."
Absolutely.
Got
Yeah.
it.
It's like
Okay.
the anchor tenant.
Yeah. So what was the first store that you launched in?
So actually the way that it worked is that it was Morton Williams that wanted the product, Morton Williams in New York City. But, we launched in a whole bunch of them, because then they just send out their reps. That's the way distributors work. I mean, they're not going to just test it out in one location. It doesn't work for them. The math doesn't add up. Obviously, they can't make money that way. So they send out their reps immediately and start selling to all their accounts. But Morton Williams was the anchor. They wanted the product, then they went out and sold to all.
Got it. Okay. So you launched in multiple stores.
Yes.
We did.
Yes.
Did you have a marketing strategy? You talked about how it is definitely harder to get off shelf versus getting on shelf. Did you guys have a plan in how you were going to, excite consumers and get them to buy?
Well, I mean, really, it's getting a cookie in the mouth of the consumer, and that's really what we focused on. So we really just went out there and did demos. We did them on our own, and then we hired a demo team to demo multiple times in each store, to really drive the consumer back into the store or in the store to buy, and also a coupon. We would also use coupons to get people to buy the product again, or dollar off, 50 cents off, and that really helps as well.
Yeah, definitely getting out there and getting people to try.
Right.
So then how did that work in regards to being able to supply the inventory to that distributor? Did they provide you a plan on what those units would look like? How did you support that?
So we're very fortunate to have found a co-packer that was willing to work with us that has a lot of capacity. Capacity is essentially not an issue. So it's just about, essentially we get a purchase order from the distributor and then we fill it. There's no demand planning in a sense, because we're not purchasing the ingredients. Our contract manufacturer is. So we just need to give them enough lead time on the purchase order. That's all.
Got it. Did you have a co-packer before you got with a distributor, or was that something that was simultaneous?
We identified a co-packer prior to getting a distributor and worked with him to get the recipe, right. That took quite a while to really test and retest and make sure that, we had a viable product and that it really met our requirements and taste, texture, and so on. So that was actually, we had known about him. I had actually found him when I knew that I needed to go down that path. And we started working with him, and then COVID hit. And I think that's a story probably a lot of people,
Right.
probably have. So we were doing well. We were moving ahead. We were getting where we needed to be. And then COVID hit, and we probably lost about a year and a half, right, Anna? About a year and a half.
Yeah, I would call it a year and a half.
About a year and a half, because he had challenges like anybody else, like any manufacturer. And so we had to start looking for another co-packer, which is not easy. It's difficult, especially with our low order quantities. Dealing with the smaller company is not really what they're looking for. And in this day and age, there's less and less of them. So we ultimately were saved, and we were able to go back to our manufacturers. He figured out what he needed to figure out, and we got past COVID. And that was really a big deal for us.
One thing that I think we're forgetting to mention was we actually started out in a very different
I was
format.
going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, so we started out with a larger cookie in a clear plastic tub with the wraparound label. And what we learned pretty quickly is that there was just too much breakage.
Actually, we started off with the wraparound.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Flexibility is key here, and moving quickly. I'm not supposedly a packaging expert, but as you move along and you realize that, you need to make some money and, margins are important, we ended up with this clear package. The cookies are stacked and then had like a wrap, a belly band, I would call it. That was a bad idea. But we quickly moved on from that, and we figured out that we needed to be, like Anna just mentioned, in a clear plastic tub. But it was a much larger cookie, and we had breakage issues and fitting it into the tub, and we didn't have the real estate with this clear plastic tub. We had a wraparound label, but we didn't have the real estate to really say who we were. And I knew that was a problem.
Yeah.
And so we moved ahead to be in the pouch that we have today.
I love that. Being flexible and understanding what changes you need to make to really be shelf ready.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your experience been like since you've been on retail store shelves? What are the wins that you've had and maybe some challenges?
I'll let you take that.
So I think actually one of our biggest challenges, honestly, was that we just went kind of pushed out there and did a lot of demos. I mean, we really believe that the best way to market something like this, because people love it when they try it, is demos. It's just getting it into people's mouths. Since then, we've also done a lot of events, but at point of purchase is really the best place to give someone a taste, because then we literally hand them a bag and say, well, you can buy it right here. Our distributor really wasn't ready for that volume of demos. I don't think anyone had ever done that before. And they just couldn't figure out how to, keep up. And the one thing that was also really helpful about the demos is that either we were in store or our teams were in store. And then we had this bird's eye view of, oh my God, how much is on shelf? Which is something that you might not know otherwise. There's only 4 packs left on shelf. So we had a lot of situations where someone would show up to demo and we get this frantic phone call, I'm here to demo and there's only 4 bags here. And it happened a lot more than once. So it was really, I think that was one of our biggest challenges is that we were ready to do it and the distributor just didn't know how to handle the situation.
Yeah. So what was the solve there?
Constant communication, just constant. I literally was calling. I called every store to confirm the demos. I texted every rep to confirm the demos. I emailed. I mean, it was just like, Nina knows, like that's all I did literally for like 9 months.
She's on the phone all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And texting and email. I mean, constant. And that was the only way around it, because you're dealing with people who like barely ever answer the phone, read their emails, or read their texts on both sides, both on the retail side in terms of the people that are working in the store and the people and the reps working for the distributor.
Yeah, we became very, I wouldn't say pain, but we're there. You would say that.
She's like, I would say that.
I think they probably have all been very grateful that we haven't really done many demos over the summer.
Yeah, they're taking a rest. I think through that process too, I think we learned about, the assortment. Our distributor was ordering the even amount of all our cookies, but we really have 2 top sellers, our sweet and salty and our churro. And what we found was they were just ordering, the same amount all the time. And then as Anna pointed out, number of times what happens is the top sellers sell out. And then you're left with these 2 lower selling, because we all brands have a top seller and then the less selling product on the shelf. And then it looks like the product wasn't selling. So we had to educate our distributors, and it took a while, and they finally got it. We pretty much, I think we're at a good place. So, but that only could happen, like, naturally, as one of those learning curves, but also, it also told us what was the top seller as well, although we kind of knew, we've always known that. So that's something to keep in mind.
So were the top sellers that you had identified the same that were actually selling?
Yeah.
We knew it was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen and no one would listen.
But that's a good lesson, I think. Although you have a distributor that is representing you and your brand, you still need to have full ownership and understand what's happening and be able to communicate things that, you're seeing in the marketplace or you're seeing in regards to the sales results. Yeah. So what has been the most effective marketing strategy? Has it been the sampling that's really the driver of getting kind of new consumers?
At this point, yeah. And I think, there's one other thing, actually, that I think and Nina, you're totally going to agree with me, that was a marketing tool, is that we got into TJ Maxx and Marshalls as a test.
Really?
Yes. And so they were in stores nationwide, every TJ Maxx and every Marshalls.
Oh, wow.
And then we started getting online orders from all over the country.
Yeah. I mean, we're not an online site, but it exploded. Yeah, so that was very exciting.
So that was a great place for you to get new consumers and even understand the states that consumers were driven most to.
And many of these are now actually repeat customers.
So you still do have a website as well that you sell from?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And then, how do you manage both of those in regards to time management and growth?
Take ownership, and I deal with the website, the back end of it, the front end of it. It's, it's not anywhere near as robust as our retail business. So right now it's feasible. It's doable. Our post person or mail delivery person is not always happy with me. But, it gets done. Again, I say that we are not really really an online store, but it is a convenience for people,
Yeah.
and so I'm not concerned about it as we grow. That is something, to consider. But for now, we're good. We're okay. It's all manageable.
Is that a lane that you plan on growing, or is still your future focus going to be more on retail stores and
Yeah.
growing in that manner?
I think the retail stores is really what our focus is. It's just a backup, and we need to have it. Obviously, when buyers are looking at our brand, we need to have a presence. And our social media is kind of in the same situation as well. We don't spend a lot of money on social media, but we do try to make it look as good as possible and as a place for people to check us out. But that's not where we're doing our selling right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of social media, and I know you said that you were running it at this time, what does your full team look like? Is it the two of you? Do you have additional people that are helping build this brand?
It's the two of us right now with people who help us. So we mentioned our demo team, and they were very engaged. We have a great demo team, really really behind product. Our social media team, and then money people, to keep us all our T's crossed and our I's dotted. But it really is the two of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And it's lots of experience from the both of you. So I'm sure that definitely helps.
It does.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I mean, normally in a situation where if I didn't have the creative, I designed all the packaging. So,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, so from that end of it, and and Anna, still doing her. We don't really need those specialists, and it
Yeah,
also gives us
that's
an
true.
opportunity to move very quickly. There's not that time lag, but design in my world, design is very expensive, and really getting the branding and the package design to where it needs to be. So it makes us much more nimble.
Yeah. I think too, sometimes there's founders that want to stay with whatever was initially created and not really deviate. But I feel like with you guys being entrepreneurs, but coupled with having that background, you were able to identify changes and move quickly and not be so connected, still connected to the brand and like the core of what it is, but still being able to be nimble with it.
Yes.
Hmm.
And I think it's important also is to listen. And I think
Yeah.
we do that. We're not so married to anything that to the extent that it would be a detriment or a lost opportunity.
Yeah. And so you had those four flavors. Is that what you have today as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what is
But
your Go ahead.
there's more to come.
You're answering my
There is.
question. You're answering
Yes.
my question. So how do you know when it's time to add a new flavor to the assortment?
Well, we're actually doing some R&D on Wednesday. How do we know? I think by sales as well. Although sometimes sometimes it surprises us. I think also too by evening out the assortment, by giving the consumer a choice. We have a chocolate cookie. We have a cookie with cinnamon and chocolate in it, and then we have a simple cookie and a spice cookie. But what else is out there that if you look at other categories, because we're looking at other brands for inspiration for past perhaps guidance. Some people have been out, and obviously a lot of brands have been out there for quite some time. They know what they're doing. And so we realized that, perhaps a fruit flavored cookie or more like a lighter, more fruit. So I'm not going to tell you what it is, but a fruit kind of focused cookie might be a great addition to the assortment. That's intuition. Also, it's looking at, what's happening in the world from just not in our category, but adjacent categories as well.
And also just understanding, just from a brutal reality perspective, if you've got something and no matter how much you like it and how much other people like it, if it doesn't turn at shelf, at some point it's got to be replaced. So it's good to have a couple of additional items. It's an interesting thing where I've worked on huge projects to, sort of minimize SKUs. Very often lines get very, very overskewed, very overskewed. So, I'm very aware of it. I'm very against it. I think we're kind of heading in a direction of having 6. The stores won't carry all 6 items, but the top 3 or 4,
Mhm.
depending on the region, the geography, the store chain, those will end up in those accounts.
Yeah.
And that we're very lucky that since the bulk of our ingredients is really the oatmeal, there's no additional cost to having the 6 SKUs. There's no, cost implications of having 6 SKUs.
Right. Right.
Which is something that if you made, 6 really kind of vastly different items under all one brand name, you could potentially have a problem because of cost management.
Yeah.
But that's not the case here.
No, that's great.
So it's the beauty of this concept, which is that the canvas is the oatmeal cookie. The
Mhm.
base is the same for every cookie. It's
Mhm.
just the inclusions and the flavors that are different.
Yeah. And then I think what you said, where you're relooking at your assortment to identify continuously what the ones that are important to the consumer versus not, and exiting, especially exiting before maybe a retailer tells you that, it's the
That's exactly it.
underperforming SKU.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, so definitely appreciate it. I mean, definitely as a buyer, when something is maybe not performing and the brand comes and says, hey, we're going to discontinue this flavor, but we have this one that we know is going to be better because of X, Y, and Z, it's definitely much more attractive than me coming to them to say it's discontinued and not having the replacement at that time.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, love that
Right.
love that
Right.
strategy. So what's next for the brand? I know you kind of hinted to some potentially new flavor launches. Is there any retail expansions, or what are your goals?
I mean, for the new flavor and some in our pocket as well. I would like to make sure that we have that available. In terms of, where we're headed, our strategy, and I'll let Anna take over with this, our strategy is really to go deep, to really get, in our region. But we are talking to, other distributors. We're not ready to go big. I think one of the things that we also kind of didn't touch on is getting to know the review schedule of a lot of different distributors. I think that was really a learning curve for us. At least for me, it was. We kind of missed a couple of rounds. That's something that people should know about. If they're your target, when are they reviewing your category? And so you're ready. We learned something new.
Yeah, just to dive into that. So, although you have a distributor, are you guys still the one that pitches to the retailers?
So in this particular case, no.
Okay.
So for the distributor that we're working with, because they're all considered small independent accounts. So, their largest chain is like 30 stores or something like that. So, the landscape in the New York City metro area is quite different. So there are a few major players like Stop and Shop and ShopRite. But even the ShopRites, quite honestly, are owned in family groups. So that's actually, I consider that, and I know Lean agrees with it, that's a disadvantage for us. So back in my day when I was working in, corporate America, on the brand side, we got to go to those meetings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they got to meet the team, the sales and marketing team.
Right.
It doesn't really work that way as much anymore. First of all, there are very few in-person meetings. And then, also what may happen, for example, is that, a brand like ours, as it grows, eventually will probably hire like a brokered sales force. And that's probably when we would attend more of these meetings. But right now, we're relying on the distributor to help us sell because we have no other option because, we can't get to these people in any other way. We don't know who they are. We don't know who it is. And we don't know their email address. We've gone through some crazy iterations trying to like stalk the email address of some,
Of course,
person or
yeah.
another that we think figure out who a buyer is, and then we can't find their email address. I've literally sent like 10 emails, like with every possible configuration. They all come back undeliverable. So we've done a lot of that, but it just shows you what happens. I could spend 2 days doing something like that. And meanwhile, the distributor just knows who the person is.
Yeah.
So we also have our current distributor that has a sales force, and then we're talking to another much larger distributor that has a sales force. There was like another one that we talked to that doesn't have a sales force. So there was no way for us to work with them at this stage because we wouldn't get anywhere. So until we're ready to pay, a broker team, we need distributors that have their own sales force, and then we work alongside with them. We always say we would love to be in the meeting because we know that if we're in the meeting, we'll sell it.
Yeah. Yeah. You have that you have that direct connection, the story
Yes,
behind it.
absolutely.
Yeah. So where can our listeners follow, support, and buy Oats cookies?
Well, I mean, we have a very robust and very well put together locator on Oats Cookies, OTScookies.com. So, that's where you'd find all the information you need as to where to go and buy our cookies. They're local. And as Anna mentioned, we're nationwide. It's hard to say if we're still in TJ Maxx and Marshalls, although I still keep getting emails from customers saying they just found it, in the stores. We're also looking towards the West Coast as well right now. So, but that'll all be in the, everything you need to know about us is on our website.
All right. Well, thank you both for coming on Shelf Talks and telling your story and giving us some real great insight as well about distributors, about starting from the kitchen and getting distributors and using your experience, which I think is amazing from your past positions in order to really be kind of experts in growing this brand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Yeah,
having us.
definitely.